First of all, I got to give a shout out to Starstrike. I think that's the person, well, I think that's the username's, the person's username here on YouTube, who did a couple of videos back to back weeks trying to decipher the ages of the main six in My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. And it got me thinking about something as well when it came to another franchise that I'm a fan of. And it also stems from a question or a comment someone brought up during during a discussion. I think either on one of the Facebook group pages or on X, aka Twitter, and it was about Alicia Acorn. Alicia Acorn, not the Alicia Acorn from Anti-Mobius or Mobius, as it will later be known, I should say, the evil Sally, but Alicia Acorn, the mother of Sally in pre-reboot, kind of post-reboot of Archie Sonic. The one that married King Max, aka Nigel, in Archie comics, in the Archie Sonic comics, post and pre and post reboot, because his name was Max in the pre-reboot, post-reboot, it was Nigel. Go figure. Anyway, sorry about that. Excuse me there. It's early. I just woke up a little while ago, and I'm trying to do this while I can. If you catch my drift. Um, but anyway, and it's 8:41 in the morning, so again, do apologize. But anyway, you know, what Star Strike did got me thinking about, what those people had said, what those people had commented on Twitter, aka X, and Facebook, and so on, about Alicia, Sally's mom. Like I said, in the pre-reboot, kind of post-reboot Archie Sonic. And the reason it got me thinking about that is because they were wondering about how old she is, seeing as though that for a majority of the comic, she was locked in cryogenic state because she was comatose. And they locked her into this state, into this tube bath, if you will, to try to heal her. I wouldn't say it was a tube bath, but more like this cryogenic tube. They kind of froze her in place there to preserve her body in the hopes that someday she would wake up and reunite with her family. And that day did eventually come. It did eventually come in the comics. But what they brought up about her is how old she is. They brought up how old could she potentially be, seeing as though she was stuck in that state for a majority of the comics run, as far as we know, continuity wise. Like, how old is Alicia Acorn? Because when she gets revived and everything, when she gets revived and she's out and about, catching up on things, getting to know her daughter and all that, it seems that in the eyes of a lot of folks, she doesn't seem that much older than Sally. And that's a good thing to point out, that she's not that older than her daughter, and to an extent, not that much older than her son. And the same could be said for those that get roboticized. Even Bernadette Hitchcock, Sonic's mom in the pre-reboot Archie Sonic, when she got de-roboticized, she didn't even look that much older than her son. She might have been like in her 20s or something like that, but not that much older. The same with Alicia. She didn't seem that much older than her son. And it just, it just felt, like, they could pass as brother and sister, or sisters, if you will. But again, the reason this is brought up is because it's an interesting question to look at. It's an interesting speculated theory to kind of discuss, because you got to wonder, like, okay, does this kind of help pinpoint when Alicia married Nigel, aka Max, in the comics? And does it pinpoint when she had Elias, afterwards, and then Sally afterwards? And the same with Bernadette, if you want to throw her in there, as well. But mostly we want to focus on Alicia. And it's a good question, to theorize and speculate about and try to get an answer to, because when you look at Alicia, when you look at her, and it all depends on, again, who the artist is. It's Van Stanley, Ken Penders himself, or Steve Butler, or or Tracy Yarlin or Jay Axer or whoever. It all depends on who's designing the characters themselves. And sometimes the designs can vary. They could be like, well, her design kind of matches up to what you would probably look like. I mean, Tracy Yardley, when they designed her character, give them credit, tried to make her look a little older than what she was. They tried to make her older than what she was. Add a few lines under her eyes and all that. And they tried to go that route. When you look at other people like Jay Axer or Jim Amish, I think, or Jim Amish, Amish, I think that's the name, Jim Amish, Jay Amish. When you look at their artwork and then you look at Steve Butler's and all that, and you can kind of see that they try to keep her more youthful in a sense. They try to keep her more like, okay, she was in a cryogenic state for a while, and obviously that preserved her body and also preserved her youth. So why not just run with that? And I'm sure that's the thought process they got was, let's run with that, and everything, and they did. They did end up running with that. And again, depending on, like I said, whose artwork you value, the most, or you respect the most, or I feel is more validated as being, okay, that's the accurate design, in presentation of Alicia. Still, the question obviously is, how old is she in reality now? How old is she in reality? Because again, she could be maybe in reality, timeline wise, she could be as old, she could be she could be like around the same age, maybe a few years younger than Max Nigel, if you will, or because she was locked in the cryogenic state, she could be maybe just a few years older, 6 years older, 7 years older, than her daughter. Like when she married Max, we don't know if she was child at that time. She was pregnant with Elias. She could have been, and depending on how you view royal weddings and everything, depending on how you view them, you know, weddings can take place, between a young man and a young woman, a prince and a potential princess, could take place between the ages of 16 and 18. So let's say, for argument's sake, Alicia married Max Nigel at 18. Maybe she was, maybe she had conceived with him, Elias, at that time, because, you know, who's to say they didn't have the little romp before or afterwards? Just saying. But getting to the point, let's say, for argument's sake, she married Max at 18, ended up with child just a little afterwards, and around 19, she, because the one thing that's always different about the comics is, or any franchise that takes place, in a different world, different universe, timeline, whatever. The one big difference, in everything is you don't know how the seasons work. Like how the time frames, work, how 1 year goes about and everything. When you look at our solar system, the further you get away, that's the longer, a year rotates around the sun. If you catch my drift, the further you get away, the longer it rotates. Like if you lived on, like, everybody hears these plans of, oh, they want to try to create civilization on Mars, make it livable and inhabitable, and that's great. But on Mars, the difference between 365 days or 366 days here on Earth is you add in, I don't know, about 200 something more days, 300 more days, and you're looking at like 625 or 626 days. Now that's a long time. Don't get me wrong, that's a long year. So again, the reason I bring this up is because we don't know what the time frame, year wise and everything is, when it comes to franchise fantasy worlds like Mobius and all that. We don't know that. I mean, even though they did try to clarify it in 124 and 125, we don't know that. We don't know that. Um, in fact, we didn't even know that. I think before that revelation. I'll put it that way. But anyway, to get to the point, You know, um, let's just say, for argument's sake, she married Nigel around 18, and a little after they had the little romp. They basically about 9 months later, around, I would say, 19 years old, she had Elias. So from 19, years old and everything, she had Elias. Now, we don't know what the age difference is between Elias and Sally. It feels like it might be just like 2 years apart. So let's say, for argument's sake, she had Elias at 19, and then she had Sally at 21. There you go. But then after she had Sally, that's when all chaos started to break loose, and she ended up in a situation to where she had to go to where she ended up in a situation, I should say, to where she and Elias got sent to Angel Island, and something happened, either before or between. I got to go back and read the comic, but something happened in between those time frames to where she ended up in a situation to where she was comatose and she had to be put into frozen cryogenic state. And at that time, we don't know how old she might have been. Again, I'm just assuming that at 19 she had Elias and at 21 she had Sally. So I can assume that having Sally at 21, Elias was probably 2 years old. So I would say maybe about 4 years old is when her and Elias. Oh no, not 4 years old, but when Elias. That's what I'm trying to say. It's early again, guys. I do apologize. And I'm trying to do this while I can, if you catch my drift. But anyway, at being, let's say, again, she had Sally at 21, Elias was 2 when that happened, and then around Elias being 4 years old and Sally being 2, Elias and her got sent to Angel Island, and again, go from there. Now, again, I know it sounds all complicated and all that. I do apologize, but again, just like Starstrike, when he tried to figure out the ages of the main 6 in MLP FIM, even he felt it was very, very complicated to kind of get around. It took him time to figure out, okay, this and that, and, calculate, okay, how this plays into that and that plays into this, and so on and so forth. So again, I do apologize, but the point I'm trying to get at is I'm trying to look at like what the age might have been. So if she had Elias, maybe if we want to speculate, had Elias at like 19 and Sally at 21, and Elias was 2 years old when she had Sally, we can assume that when Elias was 4, she was about 23, 24 years old. So let's put it around 23. And so around that time, again, her Elias got sent to Angel Island, and again, you go from there as to what happened to her, and that leads us to basically her being revived, her finally coming out of her comatose state, because she couldn't, obviously, I think it might have been the invasion by Eggman, Robo Robotnik, who became Eggman. And we got to give a shout out to Mega Beatman for doing his lore video on that. But it was during that time frame they had to move her to Knothole. They had to move her to Knothole and everything. And because they didn't have the technology, that they did, not because they didn't have the technology. I'm trying to find the right word to say. That they did in Mobotropolis after they reclaimed it. They couldn't keep her in the cryogenic state as long as they could. So they had to bring her out, put her back in, stuff like that. And it wasn't until Max got injured and was also hospitalized that she was lying right next to him, and all of a sudden, as he's holding her hand, all of a sudden he feels her hand grasping his, and that wakes her up. Well, that causes her to wake up because I guess she just needed to feel the connection, the warmth of his hand again, and the connection with her family. I don't know. It just all of a sudden it woke her up, or she came out of it. And when you look at her afterwards, again, depending on whose artwork you vie, or you vie as being the best representation of the character, you look at her afterwards, and again, it's almost like her and Sally could be sisters. Just based on the fact that she doesn't look that much older than her daughter. She doesn't. She doesn't look that much older. And again, if we were to kind of theorize as to, okay, when her and Max married, when she had Elias, when she had Sally, and when she ended up in cryogenic state, we could assume maybe about 23, 24 years old, right? And Sally, she's portrayed, as we know her, as 16, 17 years old, right? Maybe even 18, depending, because, she ended up getting married in the line of succession deal and all that, but then that got nullified, thank God. Um, but anyway, we can look at maybe she's 17, 18 years old, right? Same as Sonic. Sonic's about the same thing, 17, 18, something like that. Anyway, point I'm getting at, as complicated as this sounds, and I know it does. If we look at Alicia to to when she was put into cryogenic state and to when she was revived, we could assume that the age she was at being put into cryogenic state was around 23, 24 years old, which would basically technically make her, honestly, because if her daughter's like 17, 18, and you add 18 to, let's say, 23, that's 41. She'd be 41 years old, in actuality. But because she was placed possibly in a cryogenic state, frozen cryogenic state around 23, 24 years old, even though timeline, even though age-wise she's 18 years older than her daughter, if you will, she's 18 years older than her daughter. Oh, not 18, but 13 years older, I should say. 13. No, wait a minute. Is it 18? See, let's see. I'm trying to hold on, guys. No, 15. She's 15 years older than her daughter. Sorry about that. She's 15. Is she? No, 18, 23. Sally would have been 22. Yeah, about 15 years old, if you will. 15 years older. Age-wise, she's 15 years older than her daughter, but when you look at her, you wouldn't be able to just, you wouldn't be able to see that. You wouldn't be able to notice that she's 18, she's like 15 years, a decade and a half older than her daughter, because, you, again, depending on whose artwork you deem as the official, like, representation of the character, again, age-wise, she's 15, she's a decade and a half older, like 15 years older. But when you look at her, like from a, you look at her in person, or like from a design perspective, again, like I said earlier, it feels like she can pass herself off as Sally's twin sister. Let's be honest. She could do that. And and again, as strange as this theory and speculation is, this is coming from somebody that gave a shout out to someone that spent time trying to figure out the ages of the main six in My Little Pony Adventures with Magic. So it's nothing new when people do this kind of stuff, because it makes them wonder, especially with the, the backstory, that surrounds the character, and how they came into that situation and came out of it, and you base it on all these other similar situations in the past, in past franchises that have done, or past stories and franchises, movies, shows, and all that have done something similar. It's not hard to fathom or believe that anybody would want to try to figure out, okay, why does this character, even though we know they're about a decade and a half, 15 years older than the other character that's their child, why do they look like they can pass themselves off as their twin sister or twin brother? It's nothing new. It's nothing new when you think about that, when people want, try to speculate and theorize this, because, not only is it fun to do, but it gets other people thinking as well, because it, makes other people wonder, hey, hey, that's a good point. Why does she look like that? Depending again on whose artwork you deem as the official artwork design for Alicia. It makes people theorize, makes people wonder, because let's be honest, there are, let's be honest, there is artwork out there, and FSW artwork, sometimes extreme, very erotic NFSW artwork, and even stories written in webcomic of Alicia Acorn being very unqueen-like when it comes to her daughter, or her daughter in, enticing that, if you will, in PAL Comics A Helping Hand, or, it's the way she is portrayed in some stories, like, getting it on with not only her daughter, but, getting it on with other women, either of her own accord or because someone decided to create a device to use radio waves, a la Tails, if you will, or AKA Tails, use radio waves to mind control and manipulate all the mothers, if you will, including his own, to let their urges take advantage or take control, or it's her basically getting it on with someone like a Tails or a Sonic, or again her own flesh and blood. And when you think about, or when you hear me bring this up, and you ask yourself, well, why would they do that? Again, I believe they're doing it based on how they see, or how they saw, I should say, Alicia um, designed in the comics. That's what they're basing it on. They're basing it on the fact that she was designed in a way that, again, when you look at her, she can almost pass herself off as Sally's twin sister. I mean, there are, extreme erotic NFSW comics to where, she'll try on her daughter's vest, and she'll design her hair. She'll poof up her hair a little bit, arrange her hair to make it look make it look identical, I should say, to her daughter's. And all of a sudden, someone like, let's say, Sonic, or Tails, an aged up Tails, that is, will see her and mistake her for Sally, and then start to get it on with her, if you catch my drift, only for Sally to show up and be like, what are you doing? And kind of have an embarrassing moment there, or Sally will, join in on the fun. But the point I'm getting at, the reason you see this kind of stuff, out there with her like that, including some recent ones as well, over at Ink Bunny, which I will not post because I'm not going to get in trouble here. But you look at them and everything, and again, you wonder, okay, why? Why would they go this direction with her character? And again, I think it's based on the fact of how she was designed in the Archie Sonic comic. And the reason I believe, and I can theorize, that she was done in that manner, again, depending on who you go with, whether it's, Stephen Butler, Ken Penders, what is it, Jay Axer, Jay Amish, if you will, or, even Stanley. I think even Stanley did some work as well. Um, again, depending on who you value as being the official, character designer for Alicia, the way she was designed and everything in the comics, you can't blame anybody later on, even after the comics, have been shelved indefinitely, because never say never. You can't blame them for writing her into these kind of scenarios and these kind of stories, or writing and drawing her into these kind of scenarios when it comes to fan work, or web comics of a very adult NFSW nature. You can't blame them because of the design she was given. And the reason she was given that design, again, one could speculate, is whoever was the first to do it was going off of the fact that, okay, she was in a cryogenic state for a long time, and obviously that preserved her body to the point that even though she's about 15 years older than Sally, guess what? She is technically, in body, if you will, technically only like 5 years older than her. That's it. So, like, age-wise, like birthday-wise and everything, she's 15 years older. She's a decade and a half older, but from but from a visual standpoint, you know, again, she could pass herself off as Sally's twin sister because of the fact that she looks like she could just be only 5 years older than her daughter. And what's crazy is she's not the only one that falls into that category, because again, you look at even the roboticized citizens that get de-roboticized in the comic, and someone like Bernadette Hitchcock, Sonic's mom, it doesn't look like she's aged today either. It looks like she could be in that same category, being like 4.5, 5 years older than her son, which again puts her in that same kind of category as people deciding to put her into these kind of scenarios of the very NFSW adult nature, webcomic stories, and so on, because of that. And I think it's also because of how she was designed as well. And the same goes with Isabel Mongoose, Mina Mongoose's mom, and so on. But again, I got to give a shout out to Starstrike when he did his take on trying to figure out the ages of the main six, because it got me wondering, especially after the comments some people put up on social media, it got me wondering, she was in cryogenic state. How old is she body wise? Outside of outside of how old she is in actuality. It got me thinking. And again, you look at all these other, stories and everything that have gone down this route and so on. And I don't think you can blame anybody for, for wanting to, think about that and, think about that and consider, wondering that question themselves. But let me know what your thoughts are. Do you agree with the speculation and theory that Alicia, like age-wise, actuality age-wise, birthday-wise, is maybe 15 years older than her daughter? And do you think that do you think that despite that as well, that because she was in a cryogenic state, even though she could be a decade and a half older than her daughter, that her body says otherwise, and her body represents her being more like, 4.5 to 5 years older than her daughter, and potentially could be passed off as her twin sister? Let me know what your thoughts are, and let me know if you maybe, whoever's design you feel was the more official one, when Alicia finally came around and about and everything, was the inspiration for all these, other, takes on her, if you catch my drift, coming to be and coming to pass. Let me know. Comment down below, like the video, guys, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel. Also, click on the links in the description to find my content elsewhere. You can find me at all your favorite audio and video podcast affiliates like iTunes, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, Audible from Amazon, Radio Public, Overcast. Anywhere there's a podcast, you can find mine there as well. You can also find me, ladies and gentlemen, at rumble.com at BW Roses, at odyssey.com, at bwroses.5. You can find me at patreon.com at bwroses, where I do have a new video up. Check it out. It's under the $3 and $5 tier. The $1 tier is a nice little tip, helps me out. $3 tier not only does that, but gets you access to the content. And the $5 tier does the first two, as well as gets you a future potential bonus Q&A that I will be working on in the future. I will let you know when that happens. But yes, go support me at Patreon if you can. Be very appreciative. Also, guys, check me out at VENMO at BW Roses as well. Almost forgot about that. You can find me at twitch.tv as well. You can find me at kick.com as well, all under BW Roses. You can also, ladies and gentlemen, find me at divernart.com at BVW1979, at inkbunny.net at BW Roses. Also, check out the Teespring store for merchandise you can't get anywhere else. Help support me over at Venmo and Cash App, if you can do that. Also, follow me on Twitter, aka X, at BW Roses, Blue Sky at BW Roses, and TikTok at BW Roses. But guys, give me your thoughts on what I had to say here. Do you agree with my theory, my speculation, as strange as it may sound? Again, shout out to Starstrike for doing his video on the MLP age thing, trying to figure that out. But guys, give me your thoughts. How do you feel about this? How do you feel on the fact that, like birthday wise, age wise, Alicia is, a decade and a half, 15 years, potentially speculative wise is a decade and a half older than her daughter. But body wise, visually, when she came out of a comatose state, cryogenic state, looks like she could be 4.5 to 5 years older than her daughter, body-wise, visual-wise, and could pass off as maybe her twin sister. Let me know, guys, and until next time, I am out.